Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Unfound Now. I am Unfound's host, Ed Densel. I hope everybody is doing great out there. In this video, I will be discussing the disappearance of Aleah Scheible from Las Vegas. This is a recent disappearance from December of 2020. But as you probably know by now, in these Unfound Nows, not only do we raise awareness for a recent disappearance, but I like to use these disappearances to teach the public, anybody who views these videos, on missing persons cases in general. What can we learn about disappearances so that we can learn those lessons and apply them to other disappearances? And so we're raising awareness here, but also I'm giving you kind of a behind-the-curtain look at how we analyze disappearances here at Unfound, specifically recent ones, ones within the last couple of months. Now, if you've watched these videos before, you know that I have my notes off to the left here. So if you see my eyes going over there, that's where my notes are. I do not have every word typed out. I will be doing some of this off the top of my head and just using my notes to the side here to lead me through this discussion. As you are watching, I hope that you will give this video a thumbs up. And if you are not yet a subscriber to the Unfound Podcast Channel, I hope you will consider doing so. You should know that Aleah's mother, Karena, contacted me probably about a month ago, maybe a little longer than that ago, wanting me to raise awareness on Unfound for her daughter's disappearance. As you know, for the regular episodes of Unfound that come out every Friday, we have a rule that disappearance must be at least a year old before we will cover it on one of those episodes. However, that is one of the reasons that Unfound Now got started, to give us the opportunity to cover more recent disappearances, and then also, as I've stated, teach you, the public, how we look at recent disappearances, how we analyze them when they come up in the news. Now, before I get started, I want to make one thing very, very clear. I am not a parent, okay? I don't have any children. I'm 50 years old. I think everybody knows that. So I think the odds of me becoming a parent probably are very, 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 very low. You never rule it out. But I'm not here to tell people how to raise their children, and I don't think that that is an issue in this particular disappearance at all. But just because we are covering, or I'm talking about, the disappearance of a 17-year-old is in no way any reflection on the kind of parenting Aleah was getting. My opinion is that she was getting very good parenting, but we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a moment. I'm not here to tell other people how to do their business, including parenting. All right? And in fact, as I have written here, I think you will discover that I don't think Aleah's disappearance has anything to do with her parents at all. Whether, of course, they are not involved in her disappearance, and I also don't think that she ran off because of her parents. So here are some disappearance principles, though, that I will be pointing out in this video. Principles not just for cases involving young people, but for all people. Number one, if people do unaccepted or risky or bad things, they are more likely to do them again. Number two, disappearances don't always have something to do with what is going on in a person's life right at that second. And number three, police are in the solving crimes business, not the solving mysteries business. Even though those two things may seem like they are the same, they are not. So let's move on to the facts of Aleah Scheible's disappearance. And these come from a variety of sources, specifically or especially an interview Aleah's dad did with Jason Eber on YouTube, and I would urge you to watch that video. His last name, Jason Eber, spelled Hebert. So I don't want anybody to think that I got these facts firsthand. I have not spoken to anybody in Aleah's family, except for the exchange that I had with her mother, but that did not concern anything regarding the actual facts of the disappearance, times, dates, locations. Okay, so Aleah Scheible, once again from Las Vegas, a 17-year-old, she went missing on December 9th, 2020. She was adopted by her parents in 2014, so I guess approximately at the age of 10 years old. She had run away before, but only for hours. I got no indications from that interview or anywhere else that she had been gone for a day or multiple days, but mostly she would be gone for hours, eventually being found at a friend's house. My interpretation is maybe the parents of those friends ended up calling Aleah's parents to tell them where Aleah was. During 2020, maybe even before that, she had suffering bad grades in school, but she had been improving this first semester, starting, I guess, in September of 2020, leading up to her disappearance, and that she ran off before finals were completed for that semester. All right, of course, she was in high school. Her parents are very worried about her, of course, her other family members as well, because she does have to take medication for PTSD, and I've read and it has been said that she also has a bipolar condition. I will talk about these issues a little bit later. Regarding her cell phone, she had been caught. I don't know how recently. I did not write that down in my notes, but at some point, I'm guessing at least in 2020, maybe 2019, she had been caught with a burner phone that she was not supposed to have. Her father would take her phone away if she was not doing well in school or for other reasons, and it seems she went out and got a phone anyway and was hiding it, but I guess had been caught with it at some point. And the belief is that now that she is missing for over 2 months, that she had a burner phone before she went missing and took it with her, and so she's not using what we would call her regular phone. She had a boyfriend who I guess was at least a year older than she is in high school, but he had graduated last year in 2020, and after graduation, he had moved from Las Vegas up to northern Nevada. He is working for a company out there. I'm guessing that he is 19 years old, something like that. And this was a relationship, once again, from the interview that her father did, that was not a big fan of this relationship. I think mainly because it might have been this boyfriend who was urging her to get this burner phone so they could keep in contact with each other. And it is believed that in these past times where the boyfriend, or where Aleah had gone missing for hours, that the boyfriend had lied about her location. It was not very helpful, and we'll talk about that in a moment. So these are all facts that existed before she went missing. The week of her disappearance, so let's say December 2nd, December 3rd, December 4th, somewhere like some time around there, she had asked a friend to drive her to, I guess, to the Las Vegas airport to go somewhere. The friend said no, the friend was not going to help her do that, but I don't believe the friend knew where Aleah was planning to fly. Was it to northern Nevada to be with her boyfriend? Was it somewhere else? Was it to go find her biological family? We just don't know. At least I could find nothing saying one way or the other. All she wanted was a ride to the airport. She wanted to get to the airport, and this friend would not assist her. I will come back to this as well in my analysis. The day of her disappearance, she woke up very early before the rest of her family was up. When they got up, they found that she was missing. They checked, they must have outside video on their house, and they saw her, Aleah, running off by herself. She did not run to a car. There was nobody waiting for her. She simply ran off all by herself down the street with her backpack stuffed, presumably with clothes and other things. Okay. Now, since December 9th, So that's everything before. Now this is since. Phone usage on the phone that people know that she has been zipped. Since that day, December 9th, there's been no phone usage on the phone that I guess that everybody knew that she had. Maybe her parents got it for her. And this leads back to the idea that the last 2 months she has had a burner phone, or what we might call a phone where you are paying on it per month. And we've talked about this maybe not recently on Unfound, but it does pop up once in a while. People who have cell phones, they pay by the month. So they're not using what you would say is a regular plan. They are paying as you go. And you can get these phones basically anywhere. Walmart, 7-Elevens. In fact, when I was working at 7-Eleven is when they first started doing that, right around 1998, 99. And you can do that. And it is believed that that is the kind of phone that Aleah has now. No proof of that, but that's the belief. The boyfriend, of course, once she ran away, he was contacted. He's kind of been nonplussed, nonchalant about the whole situation. There was a suspicion, at least early, that she had gone to Northern Nevada, Reno, Carson City to be with him, and that he was hiding her. And in fact, that even came up in the interview that her father did with Jason Eber. However, that interview was done over a month ago. So that was only a month into Aleah's disappearance. I would have to say that 2 months in, now that I'm doing this on February 14th, Valentine's Day, 2021, I'm guessing that with every passing day, the odds that Aleah is with her boyfriend and he's hiding her, the odds go down, down, down. Are getting lower. The biggest issue I know that the family's been frustrated with police, is that no crime has been committed here, except for Aleah missing school. It's a big issue that always pops up when people who are underaged run away, that there is no law against it. It's not like if you catch a teenager, 16-year-old who runs away, that when you catch the kid, you put him in jail or in juvenile hall or anything like that. The biggest issue is he or she is missing school, and it's very exasperating to parents. Not that they want their kids to go to jail, but they expect more attention from the police. What I've read recently is that there is possibly a sign that Aleah is okay. My understanding is within the last couple weeks, and this comes from her mother, that Aleah has reached out to her biological mother. Once again, Aleah was adopted in 2014 using a fake Facebook account, and that she says that she is okay, she's been cared for, her stomach is full. Her mother, Aleah's mother, Corinna, believes it really is Aleah. However, I have counseled her to be very, very leery of that. As we've talked about many times on Unfound, I've talked about it on the live show, these scammers really know how to put on a show. They really know how to sound like whether they are the missing person, or they can really make it sound like they know how to get the missing person back to his or her family. These people are con artists. Once again, Corinna, Aleah's mother, believes that it is Aleah, and I perfectly want to believe, absolutely 100% want to believe that Aleah is alive and okay somewhere and is not being forced or abused, exploited, anything like that. But being that it's coming from a fake account, and my experience with knowing how good these con artists can be, I have my suspicions that it may not be Aleah. So the points that stick out to me just from those facts are, and I guess you could call them concerns, is first and foremost, this was planned. This is not something that Aleah did just on the spur of the moment. And when disappearances are planned, and there are signs of that, they are much harder to solve. Whether it's a teenager or a 40-year-old or a 60-year-old, when there are signs that beforehand that this person was thinking on leaving, maybe with an adult, a grown adult, leaving his family, leaving his children, leaving his wife, girlfriend, it's going to be very, very difficult, in contrast to disappearances maybe that look like they are the spur of the moment, or maybe even disappearances that we think are foul play that occurred, in the spur of the moment, the passion that goes too far. Specifically, I would say the ride to the airport. I think that is a major sign, besides everything else, that Aleah was thinking about leaving and might have even left sooner, earlier than December 9th. Regarding her wanting to ride to the airport, who is going to pay for that ticket? That's something that pops into my mind. Would Aleah herself been able to pay for that ticket? Was her boyfriend going to pay for that ticket? Had she connected with somebody else? That's something that pops into my mind. And once again, just because she didn't get a ride when she wanted to with a friend doesn't mean she didn't end up at the airport. And I'm wondering right now if the airlines have been checked to see if she was a passenger on any flight going anywhere. Once again, are we sure she didn't end up on a flight anyway? Second, the burner phone is not the biggest issue to me. I know that would be a big concern, and it gets a lot of attention because she's been out of contact and she's using some sort of communication, surely. The issue for me is that she has been very disciplined to not contact anyone from her life between 2014 and 2021. So it's not that she has the burner phone. It doesn't seem that she has used that burner phone to contact anybody. I can see her not wanting to contact her parents. But any of her friends, any of the kids that she was going to school with, any neighborhood friends, it seems she has contacted none of them either. So it's not just that she has a burner phone. It's that she's not using that phone to contact people that she knows that her parents would know. So it seems then she's being very disciplined, or she's being controlled. And maybe you can think about it this way. And I was, for maybe older viewers of Unfound Now, or older listeners, you might compare it to like the 1980s. Yes, back then the big deal would have been, a girl sneaking out of her house at 2:00 in the morning to meet some boy. That, of course, is a concern for every parent. But it's not as much a concern if she's sneaking out at 2 a.m. to see some boy who is helping her with her math. I know I'm being totally naive, but so it's not the part that she's sneaking out, it's who she's going to see and what's going on there. Same way with this burner phone, that it's not that she has the burner phone, it's that she hasn't contacted anybody from the Las Vegas area with it. That's the big deal. And then third, my concern is that if the boyfriend was taking a part in this, if he would, what the word you might want to use is responsible, this disappearance would have been solved by now. Once again, I'm doing this over 2 months into this disappearance. The questions I have is, does he live by himself? Is he holding up with Aleah when he's not going to work? Did he not have a roommate? Would he not have a roommate who might get a little leery of the whole situation? What about his own friends? Would they not talk? This is probably, this is a huge concern. I know it makes a lot of sense that he would be involved in her disappearance, but just, I think, once again, I said this earlier, the longer we go, the less likely that she is with him. He might have given her some money or got her that burner phone, but at this point, I would be highly, highly surprised if she's been at his place this whole time. I mean, that seems a little too easy. A little too easy. All right, so probably the number one thought in all of your minds regarding all of this is sex trafficking. Could she have been sex trafficked? There's no facts to support that. There are no facts to dispute that. I don't think so, because she had run away before. This is something that was in her mind. She did not get snatched off the street. She was planning to do this. She wanted to go somewhere and had planned for it in advance. So I'm leaning toward this is not sex trafficking. I think this is something else. So that brings us to the points that I brought up at the beginning, some theories that some ideas that I think we should take in looking at Aleah Scheible's disappearance as it stands on February 14th, 2021. Number one, people who do things are likely to repeat them. Now, of course, in Aleah's disappearance, being that she had run away before multiple times, it made it more likely that she would run away again. Now, I'm not sure what her parents could have done about that. I'm not blaming them. But parents who have children who have run away and come back and are still under your roof, you need to understand, I think, that when they run away, they're more likely to run away again. And we run into this, although we do not cover many young people disappearances on Unfound for a variety of reasons. This comes up more on Unfound with drugs, alcohol, and suicide. And there is a stat, and I looked it up. For example, for suicides, 10% of people who fail to commit suicide 10% of people who fail to commit suicide do not end up successfully doing it. That percentage is way higher than the general population. So what it means is people who have tried to commit suicide once and have failed, they are much more likely to commit suicide successfully than anybody in the population who has never tried to commit suicide. That's a fact. Just like people who have done drugs and have gotten away from them, they're more likely to relapse than people who have never done drugs and then get in drugs for the first time. Same way with alcohol. People who have been alcoholics, they've gotten sober, haven't touched alcohol in years, they are more likely to become alcoholics again than people who have been drinking their whole lives and aren't alcoholics. That's just the way it is. Some of the disappearances that I think of when I think about this particular topic, Bradley Brooks. He was a father who had gotten away from drugs, but it does seem in the days before he went missing from Corpus Christi, Texas, that he had fallen back into his habit, and there is even a belief that he was trying to hide it from the people who loved him most within hours or a day before he disappeared. We covered the disappearance of Doug Jones. He had run away from his family years before. He had left for 3 days, but then came back. And then he went missing again years later. Now, you should know his brother Hal, who was the guest on the program, does not think that Hal ran off and deserted his family and started a life somewhere else. The problem is there's no facts to support Doug running away or not running away. But he did disappear, and his truck was found near his house. But the Doug did do it once before. We can't help but think about he might have done it again. Whereas if he had never done that and run away before, then it might be more likely that we do look at a foul play scenario for his disappearance. If he hadn't done it the first time, then our attention would be elsewhere. Of course, if you want to look at the other side of this, you can look at disappearances of Unfounds that have been solved. Andrea Bowman, that her father, Dennis Bowman, had killed a woman back in 1980. All right, and he is pled guilty to that. That he committed that murder in 1980 of that woman made it much more likely that he would harm his own daughter Andrea in 1989, and that's exactly what he did. Her remains were found in their backyard. When was it? In 2019. Once again, another disappearance, Nikki McCown. She was friends, had been hanging out with a guy that we now know to have been a murderer. It wasn't known at the time of Nikki's disappearance, but some years later, this guy ended up being found out to be a murderer through DNA, and I think he is deceased now. Did he commit suicide? I forget, and I didn't even write his name here. But being that she was hanging around a guy who had murdered before makes it more likely that he murdered Nikki as well, although there's no proof of that. So once again, when people do things, bad things, risky things, they are more likely to do them again if they've gotten away with them before. So number two, the idea that comes into my mind in analyzing Aleah Scheible's disappearance is that why a disappearance happens sometimes doesn't have anything to do with what is happening right at that moment. I know that that's what we all obsess on. I know that's why we look at video, if there's any video of a missing person walking away. That's why we focus at least on recent disappearances on social media, cell phones. Now if you go back 30 years ago, you can't do those things, but we obsess on those hours and maybe the day, a couple days before a person went missing. Whereas, at least here on Unfound, I try to give the audience, by asking a lot of questions about the person, a well-rounded view of who the missing person is. And sometimes in doing that, we can start to look at issues that go back years that could be connected to a disappearance. I think the common thought in Aleah's case is that she ran off due to her boyfriend. And I know a lot of attention has been brought on that, of course, with Jason Eber's interview with Aleah's father and elsewhere. That surely could be the case, that she wanted to run away to be with him in northern Nevada. Makes a lot of sense. Okay? I'm not saying it doesn't make sense. It does make sense. However, once again, maybe just because we don't cover many teenager missing persons cases on Unfound, I, as the host who has been running the program for 4.5 years, when I look at Aleah's disappearance, I'm looking more at her PTSD and her bipolar condition, because we talk about those issues quite a bit in adult disappearances, quite a bit. And yes, relationships are the number one cause of disappearances. I'm going to keep saying that over and over and over. However, Aleah was not in a relationship with her boyfriend. They were not living together. Now, if they had been living together and she disappeared, I think that we could all look at the boyfriend and say he did something. But they had, I guess, at best, a long-distance relationship. And it was not one that he could have harmed her from, several hundred miles away. So if she was at his place, also, she would have been found by now. And I'm going to continue to stick to this. If I was doing this video a week after she disappeared, I would say, there's probably at least a decent chance that he's keeping her somewhere. She's staying at his place out of view. He's bringing food to her and everything else. 2 months in, that challenges my imagination, stretches it. So for me, I look at her mental issues she was fighting as probably the true cause, and those issues would have nothing to do with her boyfriend. Those issues would have nothing to do with her parents. In fact, the idea that I get is that she's had these well before she was ever adopted. Maybe she has them because of trauma, abuse that she suffered before she was ever adopted. That would make a lot of sense. I don't personally know that, but it would make a lot of sense to me. This would explain also why Aleah has been so disciplined about not contacting any friends and family. Why? Because she may be terrified of all of them. I know that's maybe hard for people to understand, but this does come up in disappearances where people do have some sort of a mental condition that they are fighting, and it must be cared for with medication, but we know that sometimes these medications need to be tweaked once in a while. We also have to remember mental illness is the number one cause of homelessness in the United States and in other developed countries. So this is that's why, although I think a lot of people have been concentrating on she wanted to be with her boyfriend and that's why she ran off, to me, I'm thinking about her just herself and, and in the way she might have been fighting her own psyche as the reason that she ran off. Now, we have covered some disappearances regarding that. Claudia Wells, she suffered from schizophrenia, and she was eventually seen. She disappeared from the Midwest. She was eventually seen in California. Unfortunately, she has still not been located, but she was homeless at the time. She was suffering from schizophrenia. Greg Brooks, disappearance that we covered, when was it? Back in 2017, maybe 2018. He had some underlying mental challenges that his mother talked about when she was on the program. And he took off. He was working on the other side of Orlando in a place called Castleberry. And his car was eventually found right across the bay from me in Tampa, abandoned right by a highway. It's a disappearance from the 1990s, still unsolved. But there is the idea that did he have some sort of mental episode that evening? He was supposed to be going to work, didn't show up there, and took off and then abandoned his car. Sure, it could have been foul play in Greg Brooks' disappearance, and we certainly looked at that in that episode, talked a little bit about some of the friends he was around, and they didn't seem to be as helpful as we would have hoped. But his own condition makes it less likely that it was foul play. Of course, it does not rule out foul play, but it just kind of makes foul play go down a little bit, the chances, and then something in Greg's own head, the possibility rises. Renee LaManna ran away from Ocean City, New Jersey. Once again, this is a disappearance that's from the 1990s. She ran away from the people who were trying to help her the most. And she's still not been found. Her family believes that she was sighted 3 times after running out of her sister's house right there on the shore in Ocean City, New Jersey. Not Maryland, Ocean City, New Jersey. I'm not as sure about those sightings, but that's not really the point. The point is that she also had some sort of mental condition, and the people who were trying to help her the most are the people she was afraid of the most. So in all these situations, of course, these are all... Greg was kind of a young man, but not as young as Aleah. In all these situations, they'd been living with these struggles for years, and these are just a few. We've covered many disappearances where PTSD, bipolar conditions, topics that pop up. Most importantly, there are no reasons to believe any of the people that I just mentioned are deceased. Yes, I have my opinions, but all 3 of those and many of the other missing persons that I've covered in the same kind of disappearance, they could all still be very much alive. And that's certainly the case with Aleah as well. But the point, going back to it, is sometimes issues that people have been living with for years are the reason that they go missing, not something that happened right at that second where they were there and then they weren't. It might have been that they were fighting these demons or whatever else you want to call them for years, and then whatever they were struggling with overwhelms them. All right, and has nothing to do necessarily with anything else that is going on in that person's life at the time. And point number 3, and this is probably something that exacerbates or exasperates my guests on Unfound the most, is that the police are not in the solving mysteries business. It's very something that I know drives a lot of loved ones nuts. They are in the solving crimes business. It's one of the toughest concepts for families to understand. You have to remember, there is no proof that Aleah is in danger. She may be living with somebody. She should be at home. She should be going to school. She should be taking her medication. She should be getting help for whatever was going on in her life. She should be with her friends. Absolutely absolutely 100%. But just because those things aren't happening does not necessarily mean that she is in danger. It makes it much more likely that she is in danger, for sure. But without proof of that, the police have a hard time trying to figure out what they should do about it. Aleah's disappearance right now is a mystery. It's not a crime except for the fact that she's not going to school. But I think when we think crimes, we think abuse, sex trafficking, all of that, foul play of any kind. And there's no signs of that in her disappearance, even though it makes a lot of sense. There's no proof of that. And that's the situation with adults too. 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds, and older. It's all the same. That families have a difficult time getting police motivated when there's no proof of any crime having been committed. Now, she being 17, her running off gets more attention than the 30-year-old doing so. But it's kind of the same issue in that there's no felony or misdemeanor for a 17-year-old running away, just like there is no crime for a 30-year-old just to leave his family behind. It's wrong. It's immoral. The guy would be a horrible person, but it's not illegal. And the police are in the, once again, crimes business and enforcing the law, not just solving mysteries because they exist. Moreover, as I stated in a recent live show, all of these amber and silver alerts are fine. I think they've certainly raised the profile of young people going missing and old people going missing. Amber alerts are for young people. Silver alerts are for older people. What I think about them, maybe people who are suffering from dementia, maybe walked away from a home, or they were dementia that's just the early onset and they seemed fine, and then they go off in their car and they never come home. That's what I think of regarding silver alerts. However, it's also like the terrorist alert system we had after 9/11. I explained this in a recent live show, is that, remember those color codes we had after 9/11? Do you remember that? They would be on the bottom of the screen, green, orange, yellow, and red. And after a while, nobody paid attention to them. In fact, we don't use them anymore. Even though terrorism is still a thing in 2021, the problem is that if you use them too much, then people just tune out. People cannot be constantly bombarded with alert. You just wear people out. And so you have to pick your spots when these alerts should be used. And I'm glad I don't have to be in that position to make that decision. But I do know that if we were to set up a different system for just people, adults, humans in those areas between 18 and 20, 18 to 21 and let's say 70, would be having alerts go off all the time. And there would be no proof that any crime was committed, and eventually people would just wear out of it. They just would not pay attention to it anymore. And this is also kind of what I think about regarding Aleah's case. I want her to be found. I want her to be brought back home. I want her to get all the attention that she needs. The issue is that without a crime being proven to be committed, police are going to concentrate on those teenagers who ran away, and there could be proof, and there is proof, that foul play could be involved, in contrast to Aleah's. And it's just the way it is. So I would say this to any family out there. My point: families must prove a crime was committed to get police really involved. And it's just not enough to say that she's not going to school. You have to be able to prove that somehow she was in contact with somebody online who wanted to sex traffic her, or that she's being held against her will by her boyfriend or some other person. You have to be able to do these things. That a teenager's just ran off is usually not enough. It's a mystery, Once again, police are not in the mystery business. They're in the solving crimes business. So how will Aleah's disappearance be resolved? And will it be resolved? I think it will be resolved. I think it will be. I know it's been killing her parents and her family. But the average age of a disappearance we cover on Unfound is 17 years old. So there's a lot of hope. Whereas you get to 17 years old in a disappearance, I don't know how much hope there could be. We always hold out hope that a person is still alive and is going to come home. But I think what I'm saying, it's much more likely that Aleah is alive and will be found and fine than after 2 or 3 months or 4 months, 5 months, than it would be for a disappearance that's 17 years old. And if anybody follows Unfound for any amount of time, you know that we cover disappearance going back to the 80s, 70s, and 60s. So I think there's every reason to believe she is alive. The big concern is that it's been 2 months without her medication. Where is she staying? How is she eating? Can we believe this message that was sent to her biological mother? But somehow Aleah, and I believe this was planned, somehow this 17-year-old Aleah Scheible has been able to outmaneuver everyone so far. She planned this out where she was going to go and she wasn't going to be found. And probably all those other times she ran away were dry runs to perfect some things. And it's just yet that nobody has yet cracked Aleah's plan that she hatched on December 9th, 2020. But I have a lot of faith that her plan will be cracked and that she will be found and that she will be alive. I continue to believe that, even though it's been 2 months. So that's this Unfound Now. I appreciate you watching. We try to do these once a month, or I try to do these once a month. It just depends on the circumstances. But please like this video. And if you are not yet a subscriber to this channel on YouTube, please consider doing so. I'm Ed Densel, and you've been watching Unfound Now. Thanks.